So, for example, 1 in 7 Georgians faces food insecurity. And you pause and you think, I always think of it like if I had lined up 7 people in a room, you mean to tell me somebody in that room is food insecure? But this is what that looks like.
Welcome back to Tharon's Take, where we discuss politics, arts, and culture, but more importantly, issues that are shaping our communities. Today, I'm so honored and really excited about someone that I've known for a long time. I'm joined today by Julie Bryant Kuykendall, who is somebody who I've watched in her career for over the years and had the pleasure of working with her recently. But she now has an amazing new role, and it's a very, very important role in Georgia by serving as the executive director of Feeding Georgia. She's on the front lines of dealing with the issues around food insecurity and also dealing with hunger in our state. We felt very strongly today that we needed to have a deep dive conversation about a food crisis that's not just happening in the world or in our nation, but happening here in our state. So with that, Julie, thank you so much for being here today. It's good to see you. You're looking great.
Thank you. You too.
How are you enjoying the new role?
I love the new role. I love the work that I've been able to do. I feel like I've been so fortunate in my career. I've gotten to have you as a mentor and somebody that I watch and learn from, and I've learned so much from. And it feels good. It feels like coming home to be back in the work that I'm doing right now. So
Well, Julie,
it's
you
been
stepped
great.
in at a very pivotal time in my professional career and personal career. You know, when we were getting inundated with all these requests from Washington,
Right.
D.C., in Georgia, we elected 2 Democratic senators. I reached out to you through our good friend, Rachel Tobin,
Yes,
Ray
indeed.
Ray, and you came on to Paramount and did an outstanding job as a consultant and joined us full time. So thank you for that. So, Julie, before we get into the questions, but a lot of our viewers and listeners may not know who you are. I know the great work that you've been doing for a long time. Tell us a little bit about your career, your mom, your wife, your former editor and publisher of a newspaper here locally, worked
Yeah.
in communications and PR for a long time, journalism.
Oh
But
my
tell us more
gosh.
about you.
I can feel the age just creeping up, right? Like the origin story. Yeah, 20 years of my career as a journalist. That's all I ever wanted to do. When I had my son and journalism was changing, at least I thought it was, and writing was on the wall for me, I went to work for the great Barry Love at the Metro Atlanta Chamber. She's one of these PR icons in Atlanta, just to learn if PR and marketing was something that I could do. I didn't want to presume I could do that just because I'd been a journalist doesn't mean I could be a good PR marketing person. But I had a great time at the Metro Atlanta Chamber and learned so much. I've been so fortunate in my career. When I started out here in Atlanta, working for Ed Baker at the Atlanta Business Chronicle, and he gave me a shot at being the managing editor. And for 12 years of my career, I spent there just having a fantastic time practicing the craft of journalism. When I went into PR and marketing, I think once I realized, all right, this is something I like. I think I can do a good job at this. Now, what do I want to do with this? About that time, Bill Bowling was hiring for a VP
The
of
great Bill
communications, the
Bowling.
great Bill Bowling. And I had known him. And again, I said, hey, put me in, coach. I'd like to be your VP of communications. I'd
So
like
you
to give
worked
this a
at the
shot.
food bank under
I did.
Bill. Wow. And what time
Yeah.
frame was that
So
with?
this is just as he was transitioning from his role as CEO,
Hmm.
and he was going out as Kyle Wade was coming in, and so my team was in charge of that transition. And I had known Bill outside of that work, and just when you get to work with Bill Bowling, it's just something that's very profound about what you think about when you're doing the work you're doing and the
Hmm.
way that you bring that to the community and the way you absorb that as a person. And it was a fantastic opportunity. I never forgot that work and how much it meant to me. I always felt just like I did when I was a journalist. Every night when my head hit the pillow, I had done something. I
Hmm.
think that's part of you, that's part of me.
Yep.
I want to know every single day I'm doing. I mean, a lot of people are like that, but I feel that. And so getting to work for Bill Bolin really tapped into that. And it was a fantastic experience. I think if I had to look back now, because I wondered, like, you wonder when your career takes different paths, like, why did I do this? Why did I go here? And but I look back now, especially having worked for Paramount and all that I learned watching you, I can see it now. I was building up the skills I need for the role now. I was building up what I needed to learn and know and be brave enough to do so I can serve those who really need it.
But you also talk a little bit about your entrepreneur experience. And so you leave
Yeah.
the Atlanta Food Bank, you start your own firm,
Yeah.
you're out here, you got clients, you're trying to managing them. Tell us a little bit about that
Yeah,
entrepreneur
because
experience.
before that, I'd gone to the Technology
That's right.
Association of
Oh, how can
Georgia,
I forget
right?
tag?
And not right, and worked for the great Larry Williams, who we're
Yes.
still close. And talk about a fantastic experience. Like again, pushing on all sides of economic development and getting to watch him and learn from him. And then COVID.
Yeah.
So the whole world just, turned sideways for a minute. And at that time, all of us were running. And I had thought about going out on my own. It always seemed like not a very concrete, safe thing to do. I was a mom, I was a single mom. And at that time, I just all in one fell swoop. And I'm sure a lot of us had these epiphanies during COVID. I just said, you know what? I'm just going to head for the edge of that cliff and I'm just going to take a big flying leap off. Because if I don't do it that way, if I don't do a trust fall, I'll never do this and I'll never know what it's like to go out on my own to see if I can really do this. And so I did. And as soon as I sailed off that cliff, I noticed that the parachute just opened.
Mm-hmm.
And then I met you. Ray got us in touch
Mm-hmm.
and we started working together and it was like things just fell into place. I'm just so grateful. It was amazing. It was an amazing time. It was an empowering time. I don't think I'll ever be scared again in career. Like once you've been an entrepreneur, you got this. Like even though you know how to be scrappy, to pull yourself up by the bootstraps, all those things happen when you take that brave step to become an entrepreneur, just like you've done. You have grown Paramount to an iconic, important brand and you've continued to master your own brand, as we talked about so many times.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what it takes.
So let's get into this issue, this
Yeah.
crisis
Yeah.
that we have in Georgia around food insecurity, but hunger. When I called you and I said, "Hey, I want you to come on Tharon's Take," and you're in this new role, it'd be a good opportunity to raise your profile even more. And I remember what you said to me. You said, "Tharon, it's not about my profile. It's not about me. It's about us bringing more awareness to this issue that we have in Georgia." And so I want you today to take our viewers and listeners into the work that you're doing as executive director for Feeding Georgia. But I told you I was going to push you. I want you to really give us some real life statistics
Okay.
and really set the stage for what a lot of people who I think are being a little unseen
Mm-hmm.
at times are going through right now.
Yeah. I think you just nailed it right on the head, unseen. I think when you look at food insecurity and hunger and these concepts, often many people, most of us in our day to day lives, hear that and we think, hunger? You mean like third world country? Food insecurity? What's that mean? And I think that's completely normal. It's hard for most of us to understand what it would be like to truly feel food insecure or hungry unless we grew up that way or had those issues as we were somewhere along in our path of life. So I never fault people for not understanding what it looks like. I never fault people for being suspicious about the statistics. So, for example, 1 in 7 Georgians faces food insecurity. And you pause and you think, I always think of it like if I lined up 7 people in a room, you mean to tell me somebody in that room is food insecure? But this is what that looks like. And here's the story of how that shapes up. So, if you think about being insecure about food, a lot of times what is happening to our families and to the neighbors that we serve is that somewhere in their budget, somewhere in their life, food has become an issue that they're highly stressed about. So whether it's being able to foot the grocery bill, thinking about a given week and how I'm going to have enough meals to put on the table for my children, where am I going to go to get the food and how am I going to get there to get it if I don't have reliable transportation, for example? Or if I'm just cobbling together part time jobs or trying to make my existence work within the things I'm responsible for and match up, that is where that insecurity. So if I'm feeling insecure about my ability to do that, that happens to a lot more people than we think. You and I can appreciate going to the grocery store. My eyes pop. These days I have done away with getting it delivered to the door because I did a little cost analysis and I thought, I'm being lazy here. But for
And it's those fees that they tack on
sure,
for
there's that, and
delivering.
you don't
Yeah.
even see it until
Yeah.
you get your bill and you're like, "What did I just do?" I
Hmm.
mean, I could have gone to the grocery store and saved myself like $50. That's a lot of
It's a
money.
lot of money.
But that's us. For people that are faced with hunger and food insecurity, that's folks who, again, uh, are maybe dealing with unreliable transportation, maybe struggling to find housing. Being able to afford housing is increasingly difficult. Maybe their jobs are not as secure as they would like them to be. Maybe they have multiple part time jobs. Maybe they have multiple children. Maybe the spouse lost a job. You've got a two-income family doing pretty good, living in a pretty nice home, and they've got their children in a pretty good school situation, but something goes wrong.
Right.
Someone gets sick. The car goes out. And then you begin to see a family in distress. That's food insecurity. That can be hunger. There are so many children, one in five children in Georgia faces food insecurity and hunger. And I can tell you, you'll see that in the school systems when you talk to school superintendents and you talk to teachers in certain underserved areas in particular. Kids come to school, they're tired, they're hungry, their home life is not stable, and they just need a meal. And if we roll it all the way back to just the basics for all of us as humans, food's really high on the list. So when you're not able to get the food you need and you're insecure about food, it's kind of all you're thinking about, right? Your stress levels up here, your cortisol levels are up here. It's all you're thinking about because it's a basic human need. Food, if we can imagine having to think about not having enough of it in a country like ours, in a great state like ours, in a neighborhood like ours, how could it be that people can't put those things together and have enough food to thrive?
So, how long were you in the role of executive director before the federal government decided to shut down?
Like a hot minute,
I mean, like less than
like a
Yeah.
minute,
Okay. So
right?
you take this
Yeah,
role. So take our viewers and listeners through this. You take this new
yeah,
role, executive director of Feeding Georgia. Previously worked at the Atlanta Food Bank.
correct.
You got me to come over and talk to Cal and others, and I
I
learned a
did.
lot about touring the food pantry and seeing the amount of food. But what was the days like before the federal shutdown and SNAP benefits were cut off? And then take us through that period of time where you guys were on the front line of trying to feed hungry people.
Yeah, it was tough. I came into the role, and immediately you're just getting the lay of the land on the statistics, just like I quoted 1 in 7, 1 in 5 children, 1 in 10 seniors. And then we were starting to hear about the increased need, like how many more people the food banks themselves were serving year over year. So already ahead of the shutdown, we knew without a shadow of a doubt that the data was showing that the need was increasing and continue to increase. And if you think about it, it's still been hard for some people to come out of COVID. So we're still in a little bit of the tailwinds from that. And at the same time as that's been happening, grocery prices have been going up, fuel prices have been going up. And then you have administration changes. So, as an emergency food bank assistance network, we see administration changes all the time. That's a constant. But if you compound that on top of other things like a rise in need, fuel prices going up, grocery prices, and then suddenly you've got a shift in priorities where an administration says we want to do things differently, and suddenly you're like, what does that mean? Then you start to try to be proactive in thinking, all right, what's that going to look like? So I know, for example, that many of our food banks in the Feeding Georgia network rely, of course, on TFAP commodities. Their food's coming from three essential different places. You've got purchased food that
Mhm.
they're able to raise money to purchase. They've got USDA commodities, wonderful commodities from the USDA, and they have donated food. So if suddenly one of those three legs of the stool starts to teeter a little bit, it puts pressure on the other legs of the stool. All that was happening ahead of the shutdown.
Okay.
And we heard that the shutdown was coming, and I was talking to somebody yesterday, and I was saying, it was like, oh, I think we're about to get hit by a tsunami. Oh, we can't be. Oh, it won't happen. We'll be all right. No, we better prepare.
Hmm.
And then you look off at the horizon, you're like, that is a big wave. We're about to get hit by that big wave. What are we going to do? So immediately we go into, all right, what do we do when these kinds of things happen? How have we activated? And COVID We had good remembrances from COVID on how to react quickly, how to pivot really
Hmm.
quickly and get
Hmm.
food to people who need it. We had Helene, the disastrous Helene that just decimated some of our areas that we serve. So we got ready. And then here comes the wave. And I can tell you that when it was just the shutdown, we've seen that before. And I can't express enough to you and to listeners the sophistication, and I'll brag about this. The Food Bank Network is a highly scalable, sophisticated supply chain and logistics operation. We know where people are that need food, and we know how to get it to them quickly. We've gotten really good at that over the years.
Because you guys you have the data.
We have the data, we have the storage facilities, we
Okay.
have new facilities, we have a lot of capacity, a lot of strength, and a lot of history and experience.
So the people who are going to the food banks, food pantries before the shutdown,
Mhm.
I was pleasantly surprised by the sophistication and the ability to help people, whether you're in your cars or you actually, get out of your car, go in. You guys, there were a lot of pre-packaging going in. But what I was surprised about, Julie, and that's why I want you to talk to us about,
Yeah,
never do we judge anyone.
no.
But these were people who, some of them you could tell, um, just based on their physical demeanor,
Mm.
were very appreciative of the
Yeah,
food. Some of them a little ashamed that they even had to go
of course.
to pick up food. But these were people who, and not to judge anyone's financial situation, but I don't want our viewers and listeners to think that it was all just poor people.
No.
These are working class women and
Yes.
men, moms and dads, children,
Right.
aunts and uncles, brothers and sisters who were depending on this food that was being given to them for free. So now, okay, SNAP benefits are gone. People can't afford to use as we call them, the food stamps to buy food. People can't already afford food because of cost of living. Take our listeners and viewers into how you all handled that wave as you just referred to.
Yeah, so when we started to realize that we may be tipping out of just shutdown and into an entirely different territory that we'd never been in,
Mm.
I think that's when the severity of the shutdown really hit us. So as you go into a shutdown, and we've seen shutdowns before, then you will see food banks begin to drum up their fundraising to go and purchase more food, try to balance and keep the food on the shelves. And you saw Atlanta Community Food Bank request that its board allow them to release $5 million in reserves so they
Mhm.
could quickly go out and find the food. Other food banks were doing a similar thing, and that usually will sustain food banks through a shutdown. Um, that alone is a big heavy lift and a big heavy wave. If you add to that SNAP being cut off, for the first time, we started to see people we didn't recognize in the lines. So you said something important a minute ago. I think you and I can agree that nobody wants to show up
No.
in a food bank line, right? It's going to take a crisis. Something has gone wrong for folks to need to come out and see our wonderful pantries and our wonderful partner agencies and the wonderful volunteers who give food every week and every day. So, for the very first time, we were seeing families that we had not seen before. Our lines were filling up with a lot of first timers. Military families were showing up more often, TSA workers, the folks who had in the beginning of the shutdown, maybe could stretch the dollar because they had some savings. And then week 2, I'm getting a little worried. By week 3 and week 4, I just talked to somebody yesterday who had a son in the military, and she was like, by week 3, he's calling in tears, ashamed to ask mom, but having to ask mom for some money because he's not going to be able to pay rent and or put groceries on the table at the same time, and he's got a family to feed. So there was a lot of fear, more than we've seen in the past, and it was hard. It was hard. Your head gets down, and you're thinking, all right, at some point we've just got to all, not every man for themselves, but all of us across the Feeding America network, like all food banks across the country, like let's all just pool resources and start to find food anywhere we can. So we started to flip into that mode, and it was hard. It was hard to watch it. You when you get into it, it's like anything when you're faced with an emergency, a crisis. You're just in it. You're just going. You're just going through the motions. But I want to say this because I want everybody to hear this. About 2 or 3 weeks in, all of a sudden, I know I picked up my head and I feel like everyone else did. And we looked around, we're like, wow, here comes the community. Here comes the community.
Mhm.
And they showed up. Everybody showed up. People showed up giving $10 donations or showed up to those mobile food
Yeah.
distributions just as volunteers.
Mhm.
Corporations came out. The phone was ringing. What can we do? How can we help?
And
And
I was
that was
and I was
something.
smiling because your utilization of earned media, how you
Right.
guys got the local media involved. And you're not just doing it in Atlanta Metro.
That's right.
I mean, you spend an enormous amount of time in Middle Georgia. I think I was on the phone with
Yeah.
you one time. You were coming from Southwest
Oh,
Georgia.
yeah.
And so take us deeper into um, what's going on as far as suburban areas
Mm,
who are struggling
hmm
with hunger,
hmm
poverty, and then also food deserts.
hmm
And we act like in Georgia they don't exist, but no,
mm.
there are a lot of places in this state that has food deserts. So
Oh, yeah.
give us that sort of insight of what is really going on with suburbia, but also food deserts
Yeah.
and the need for more access to clean and healthy food.
Hmm. Let's help listeners understand what a food desert is. So, the best way to describe that is I live in an area where it's very difficult for me to find a grocery store easily. So, I'm either in a rural area, typically, where I might live 30 minutes from a grocery store and I may not have reliable transportation. So, the best I can do is get to the local convenience store, the local gas station, and that's where I'm getting my groceries. Now, if you and I are stepping into a convenience store, and sometimes we'll run folks and volunteers through a game where they're uh, taken a scenario, let's say, instead of a game, they're taken to a local convenience store and they're given a certain amount of like play money. Now, go and buy your groceries here. How are you going to serve a healthy meal to your family at a convenience store or the dollar store or a gas station? Go. And you'll find pretty quickly a lot of processed foods, a lot of things that you'd have to cobble together to make a meal, and nothing that really looks like what you and I would think of as a nice, healthy, nutritious meal.
Mhm.
So, food deserts are that way in rural areas. But what people don't realize is how much that we see food deserts in urban areas. So, there's a concept called the suburbanization of poverty. And that goes around, you've heard a lot of articles about that. And basically, what that means is as a city like Atlanta grows, pushes people out, just in terms of affordability, to suburban areas, right? Low, I'm going to try to own or rent a home as close to my job as possible, but I got to get what I can afford. So that's going to put me here. And so I'm going to be out here in a nice suburban area, nice enough. And I may have a grocery store somewhere nearby, probably 20 minutes in traffic, but what if I don't have transportation? What if there's not a bus line?
Mhm.
What if my transportation's not reliable? What if I'm between jobs? Then all of a sudden, it creates a pocket of food insecurity and a food desert where I'm again going to a convenience store just down the street that I can get to, going to a dollar store. That's what a food desert is. It's a space within a rural area or an urban area where it's tough for me to find healthy, nutritious food. And that exists far more than people realize it does. And I would just walk you through some scenarios. So, the way that we try to get after that is to encourage mobile food pantries, encourage more agencies to pop up and get to the people that need it most. But that's happened over time. So, if we just think about all the things we've just talked about in terms of the downward pressure on folks that are facing food insecurity and hunger, that's a lot of different places. It's like death by a thousand slices,
Mhm.
right? And I think that's what we're seeing right now culturally. That's what we're seeing right now as a face of food insecurity and hunger is a lot of pressure from a lot of sides, all boiling down to one thing. I can't find enough food to thrive. I can't put together enough resources to get all the food I need for me and my family as reliably as I need to. And I'll say this, think about this. When you have enough food and that basic need is covered, you're focused on what? let's say I'm going to get an education, right? I'm going to go back to school. I'm going to find a better job. I'm going to be looking for things that will help my family grow and
Yeah.
help my children succeed. Then I'm focused on those things. But if I'm way back here at fear up here, that's harder. It's harder for me to focus on the things that it takes to thrive. That's just basic humanity.
You said something to me earlier before we started taping, and I want you to go a little deeper.
Yeah.
You said that feeding hungry people shouldn't be a partisan issue.
Mm.
But, I'm going to push you a little bit. And because, the Republicans are in control in Washington, but we also have Republicans who are in control here in the state. And not saying the Democrats do it much better or
Mm.
whatever, but how have you been able to navigate doing your philanthropic, work that requires private donations that you just talked about, support from your board, corporations? But how have you been able to navigate raising this crisis and this issue to our elected leaders across the state of Georgia to make sure that they understand, don't just be concerned about hunger and food deserts, and dealing with this crisis when it's a federal shutdown or, the state is going through some stuff. But how do you maintain the visibility and the prioritization with our elected leaders and our community leaders to make sure they understand the work that you all are doing and what role can they play?
I have some good news for you there. But I'll start with the shutdown again. We'll go back. And we talked about Bill Bowling earlier. And I think a lot of us still go back to Bill when times are tough. And I know I was. I was texting and emailing, and I said, Bill, what do I say? How do I get this right? Because I know one thing for sure, and this is the good news. Most people that I talk to on either side of the aisle, and most people just every day, most people care. Most people don't want to think that there are hungry children in their neighborhood, in their community, in their district, in their county, or in their state. Most people care. They really, truly do. I hear that all the time from both sides of the aisle. It's more, how do we fix it?
Mm-hmm.
And how do we work together to fix it? What is the solution? And I would say to you that no solution is perfect. And I think we always remain open to innovations, pivots, evolutions. That's something we've always dealt with. Again, as an emergency food assistance network, we're always going to be here as an emergency food assistance network, getting food to the people who need it. That's never going to change. How we do it, we can work together on that. But I will say this, during the shutdown, I asked Bill, what do I say? How do I get this right? How do I not say the wrong thing so that I can continue to protect and serve the folks who need it most? Because they don't have a voice, right? Not the way we do. And Bill said, remember this, hunger was never meant to be a political issue. It's not. Hunger's not political. Hunger is a moral issue. So when you think about it that way, well, that's a different conversation. And that's a conversation that's an open door for everybody to engage in. I like to look at it that way. And I trust our lawmakers. I do, because I've seen them on both sides trying to figure out how to be responsible fiscally and in all different ways. And yet also trying to make sure that everybody in their community is taken care of. So I think while some days it feels really frustrating and scary when you think about the numbers going up and we see the need rising, we see food resources coming down as the need is going up, and we're constantly trying to figure out how to fix this, how to serve the people that need it, especially as more come to the lines. This, I would say, is ours to figure out as a community, as a state, as a nation. These are conversations we can have. We can work on this. We can figure this out. I know that to be true because we've done it. And one of the ways we did it was during the shutdown. We proved it to ourselves. We proved two things. One, that if you knock too many things off balance at once, the need is going to spike, and nobody wants that. You create a situation that makes it very difficult for everybody. And two, we realized that we could come up with solutions quickly. So the community can respond. We know what to do with that response quickly. and we can work together on this. And I'm Pollyanna. I wake up optimistic every day. I'm
I
going to
know.
say it.
I
And I
remember.
know I'm going to get folks who are like, I can't believe you're not going harder on this. But from the heart, I believe that we can fix this. I believe we can get rid of hunger.
So what does the data show? I mean, are you seeing, okay, you said that real quickly, these were different families that you had not seen before,
Mm-hmm.
people who were not relied on that SNAP benefit every month that they were
Mm-hmm.
receiving. So now post shutdown,
Mm-hmm.
what have you seen? Are you seeing a lot of your regular people who need food because they're hungry still come, or are you seeing an influx of new people, or have you seen the numbers gone down? Like, take us into
Mm-hmm.
sort of the flow and what the data is showing.
Both do
Both.
that. Both going up, both staying up. People are still in recovery mode from the
Hmm.
shutdown. So if you figure, let's just take a family that was doing okay, but then the shutdown hit.
Or
They
the
were
health, or the
furloughed.
healthcare,
Yeah.
subsidies went up.
Well,
Healthcare,
that's
yeah.
just happened, right? So that first wave, it's like, I got furloughed. I was without a paycheck, maybe going on, a couple of months without a paycheck. I mean,
Hmm.
again, it was week 3, week 4 where you started to see it hit. Like you go beyond 30 days and you're now in crisis mode. So you see those folks still recovering. Now we have folks who are dealing with, higher health insurance premiums and again debating whether that's something they can afford. Those trade-offs that we see so much in food insecurity. Do I buy the groceries or do I pay the power bill? Or what am I going to do about the health insurance premium? Do I go to the doctor or not? My chronic illness can wait. I know how to manage this on my own. And oh my God, the tire just went out in the car. It's that constant flow. That's life.
Hmm.
That's everyday life. I'll tell you who we worry about now. Coming out of the shutdown, we see recovery, we see added pressure again, but we also see that 130% gap, that gap that people, you'll hear about this. If you look it up, it's not hard to find it. So these are the folks who are not eligible for federal assistance, but don't make enough money to make ends meet. And they are in the food insecure or hungry category. That is the gap that's growing that we are worried about perhaps most, is how to meet, because again, now they don't have a safety net federal nutrition program to help them, help mind that gap. They are in a gray area. And that's who's vulnerable right
Hmm.
now. That's who we're really watching. It's like, how do we get after that? How do we serve those folks who are going to the grocery store and they're barely making it, who are trying to make those trade offs just to make a week get by and just to make sure the kids have the meals they need on the table? And then I'll say this too, like on top of everything else, there is an emphasis on a really good thing, which is fresh, healthy, nutritious food. Like all of us want to do that. So that's something else. That's a whole nother territory that we've been able to make a lot of
But you guys are making
inroads in.
progress in that, because I have a lot of my friends right now, and there have been some articles that have come out about the
Yeah.
food that we consume, clean eating.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone wants to know what certain foods are better for their blood types, but clean eating and what we're eating and what we put in our body is very important. So you guys are making progress in that
Yeah, I
area.
want to brag about our agriculture commissioner, Tyler Harper, who
Hmm.
has done a tremendous job being a great leader. And one of the things that's been so good is our farm to food bank um, program. So you're talking about, is it 14 million? It's millions of pounds a year in fresh, healthy, nutritious produce. It's about 750 truckloads.
Oh yeah,
And this is that number 2 produce. It's that ugly produce. Nobody wants it. The grocery stores aren't going to sell it. It's a lumped up potato and a double carrot and some funky looking thing.
eggplant.
Yeah,
Yeah.
some weird looking thing that people don't know what to do with. But instead of plowing it under, the Farm to Food Bank program is going to come in and make the farmers
Mhm.
whole, while we get that food out of the fields and we give it to the folks who need
So
it
you guys are
most,
helping farmers.
and they love it. So the healthy, nutritious produce, our folks love that. If they could get more of it, they would do it every day.
Well, I remember former DeKalb County CEO Michael Thurman
Oh
would give
yeah,
out food
yep.
pretty much every weekend during COVID,
We
but
thank
he
him.
had that partnership with the agriculture commissioner's office,
Hmm.
and that when you open that box, I would see that big piece of squash and, like you said, tomatoes and weird looking things. But you also had like meat that people could
Yeah.
could use. So Julie, what is a food bank?
Yeah.
Beyond just emergency services, responding to crisis
Mhm.
moments like when a shutdown happens in the federal government, what does it look like? What are the primary duties, and what are some of the things that our listeners and viewers probably would know that a food bank does for people?
I'm so glad you asked that question. I think that's the big thing, right? Half the job that we do is awareness and education. So most people, when they think about food bank, what do you mean by food bank? I know I see my church pantry. I know I see that agency down the road giving out food, but how's it all connected? So I'll explain.
Mhm.
So food banks, we have member food banks across the state. So there are big hub food banks. If you think of them as big distribution centers, is one way to look at it. So these have giant warehouses, coolers and refrigeration, generators, trucks that roll, refrigerated trucks, and they are essentially the bank. And so what happens is all those wonderful church pantries, volunteer places, what we call partner agencies, organizations that want to do distributions of food in their communities, they come to us for the food. And so when I say they order it, I mean they get donated food. So, but it's so sophisticated, again, going back to that sophisticated supply chain and logistics operation, that they can go online and they know how much food they need each week, and they can put it into the system and either come to the food bank itself or we'll come to them, and we make sure they have all the food they need to serve those in their community because they know their community best. We make sure that we are empowering and serving those partner agencies, of which there are more than 2,000 across the state of Georgia, volunteer operations, some big, some small, that feed people every day in their neighborhoods. And so neighbors feel good about coming to the places where they know people, there's a familiar face, there's no shame, there's no judgment, and they can go and get the food they need. Another really cool thing that people probably don't realize is sometimes the food does come in a box, but more often time what you see is what we call our choice pantries. So you're walking in and it looks like a grocery store.
Hmm.
And so that's been an evolution in food banking over time is you come in and all that food is free, but you're walking through with a buggy just like you would in a grocery store and you're picking out what you know your family needs. Instead of me handing you a box saying, here's what I think you need, you can come through and you know what your family will eat. You know if you have food allergies and you know what's going to take care of your family for the week or the days ahead.
Food is medicine. Man, when
Yeah.
you said that to me, I thought about that deeply because truly, food is medicine. It can be medicine for a lot of people who are going through different things. When you say that to people, what are their responses?
Oh my gosh, this is what I get so jazzed up
Yeah.
about these days because to me it's like such a huge universal win. So think about it this way: a system where providers like
Hmm.
doctors and medical care providers will screen for two things: food insecurity and chronic illness. And when somebody comes up with high blood pressure and food insecurity, diabetes and food insecurity, then the doctor or the provider will stop and say, "Hang on a second. I know a program where you can get healthy, nutritious food." And if you eat better, and if you, get the nutritious food you need, your chronic healthcare condition is going to get a lot better. And one of the things we see in Atlanta, you can see it every day down at Grady Hospital, is the Jesse Hill Market. So folks go down there and they get their quote unquote prescribed food, or someone has said, hey, I'm going to sign you up for this program, and they can go down and get it, and it's free food. There's a learning kitchen where they can learn how to cook with it. So maybe I've never cooked with a rutabaga before, or maybe I'm not sure what I'm going to do with all these eggplants or sweet potatoes, but somebody's going to show me as part of the program. There's a beautiful kitchen where I can learn how to do that, get some recipe cards, men and women. And the awesome thing about Jesse Hill Market is when you go in and you look above the reception desk where people are picking up their food, there are these testimonials like hanging above that say, my blood pressure went down. My glucose is now regulated. Think about that as something we can scale. And that's what we're trying to do now as a food bank network across the state and across the country is do more of that work where we are actually helping people access the healthy, nutritious fuels and food they need to have their medical conditions get better. And that's a win across the board.
What scares you and what gives you hope?
The downward pressure. So right now it feels like it's coming from all sides. And that's tough for the families that we serve. Um, Not only are they dealing with the day-to-day stressors of just finding the food that they need, But now it's the threat of losing the things that they're holding on to just to make ends meet, just to get the food they need. So thinking about that kind of worry and anxiety, um, that's hard. If I think when people take tours of food banks or they go to a partner agency or they attend a mobile food pantry distribution, they see the families just like you did. You see how it feels. You can relate. You can look and see someone walking in with their children and realize that family's having a tough time. Do they need to worry any more than they're already worried? And it's tough to see all of the things coming together in a bad way at the same time, and at the same time trying to figure out what do we do.
Well, tell our listeners and viewers how they can get involved. For those that are already involved, how they can get more involved. What's sort of the call to action? Like, how can one contact Feeding Georgia
Mm.
and become a volunteer, or give to food pantries? Like, what's the best way to get in contact with you?
It's so easy. It's so easy. I think the equation is $2 equals 5 meals. Is that the math? But it's so easy. A very little bit of support goes a long, long way in food banking. So find your local food bank, find your local food pantry, support them with your time and treasure. So you can volunteer, you can make donations. The donations that you make allow them to purchase the food they know they're going to need or come and get the food that they know they're going to need. Just showing up and being present, that's good too. And also just, I think consistently raising awareness and educating people, that's another way. So if you have a heart for advocacy like we do, like being willing to talk to lawmakers, if you have your own personal experience with food insecurity and hunger, being willing to tell that story. All of those things make a huge difference. And I think it's more than people realize how easy it is. I especially tell people during the shutdown when they made donations that we were going to take that money and we were going to buy food and it was going to be on someone's table right then and there, like that day, that week. And I think that's the beauty of food banking and working in this space is that we make a difference and we can do it fast and feels good.
Well, Julie, thank you so much for taking time to come and talk to us today, and really appreciate all your just candid sort of deep dive and not being ashamed to give us the numbers. I mean, 1 in 7 people, 1 in 5 kids. I mean, just hearing that today, it really hit me, and I think it's going to hit a lot of our viewers and our listeners to really take that into account when they're seeing people. You never know what someone is going through. So thank you for the work that you're doing, and thank you for supporting the podcast. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on. It's an honor to be here. I appreciate it.